international property investment specialist. She's based in Pitt Street in the city, and she's got her partner Drew on board, and Luca. I think some of us have met Luca and what an incredible human being she is. Susan's burning desire is to travel the world, help educating girls to break the cycle of poverty and sex slavery. Something no one would know about Susan. She was sponsored by Paddy Palin and Mac Pack to help develop rock climbing in Thailand. She also camped on the beach for 4 months and put up roots. Her key to success is the ability to make complex information simple with her team. One of the goals I love from your gain sheet was to grow your team to 13 this year. And as we've all seen in your growth in your journey with business, and B&I itself has been incredible to watch. Susan Farquhar.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks everyone at B&I. Thanks for coming today, and especially thank you for inviting your visitors to hear what we've got to say this morning. Like Stephen, I'm all about mitigating risk for my clients, but I do that through property portfolio growth. So our motto at Calla Property is building your dreams, and we very much take the approach of finding out what it is that you're trying to achieve in your life, especially in retirement or tax minimisation, and then build a property portfolio that matches. So I started my education through international relations, and I wrote my thesis on Australian aid agencies and ethics. I then went on to do a course in financial planning and mortgage broking, and I also have an MBA in finance. I've won lots of awards. Last year was a big year for awards for me, and I'm really passionate about education. We're yet to get this year's specs, which I'm quite interested to find out, but last year in the investment blog awards internationally, we ranked 60th in the world and 18th in Australia. So we're really passionate about educating the public on property and the implications through. So our blogs are on our website and also through Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, it's interesting, we're very research-based, and a lot of you know that already, and I'll go into that in a little bit. Why our research is important is this slide, really. All of these have been published, last year I was published in over 100 publications, and I was on a lot of radio stations and TV stations. Basically, the business, the cuts to reporters and to fact-checking is quite severe in the media sphere. So they're always asking for experts to fill their content. It's quite dubious at times what that content is. And it's a lot of people form their opinions about, well, pretty much everything through the media. So it's really important to understand that there's a big difference between what you hear on the radio or what you, as we heard this morning with all of the B&I introductions, and what you read in the paper compared to what is actually going on and based on research. So, as I said before, this is about building your dreams. So have a think about these points for a second. What does your first day of retirement look like for you? What are you going to do? You're going to pop open the champagne, or are you going to go and buy 2-minute noodles? And a lot of that has to do with what your planning is now. If you know that you're going to retire on $30,000 a year, your plans on your first day of retirement are probably quite different to if you know you're going to retire on $150,000 a year. Okay, and that's what we really work towards with our clients. So the macro research, basically we've got a research methodology I've been developing for 18 years, and we have 130 checkpoints that every property that we recommend to our clients has to tick before we will recommend it. Now they're based on 3 main criteria, or areas of research. The macro research is the area of research that directs us to the capital city or the region that is about to have a lot of capital growth. Now we start with the economy. Is it a diversified economy? Is it, usually it's driven by infrastructure projects that drives employment, that drives population. Population is the biggest driver of demand. And then we look at supply and demand, as well as laws that can change that supply side and demand side as well, whether that's changes to first homeowners grants or stamp duty concessions, or whether they're changes to dual occupancy laws. So look at all of those aspects. The micro research, once we understand where to go, right, so say Melbourne, for example, whereabouts in Melbourne? What's the difference between, investing in North Melbourne compared to Heidelberg, for example. So when we're looking at property markets all around Australia, so that's the funnel. We go from the macro to the micro, and the micro is about getting the right property in the right place. The right time is about the macro, okay? So micro is about what kind of amenity are people looking for, what kind of property will help, will match, the people in that area. And then we conduct due diligence on the builders who are building in the areas that we've identified. Not very many investment property companies do it this way. Usually investment property companies get marketing stuff from the builder or the developer, and then they just flick it on to their clients. Our approach is quite unique in the marketplace, and is basically ensures success for our clients. So just to give you an idea of how this works in action, okay? So this is the macro research in action. So these are some of the drivers of growth for Melbourne. You've got this in your folders, I think. And you can also see a lot of this information on my website as well if you'd like to delve into it a bit more. So we just describe what Melbourne is for people that maybe aren't that familiar with Melbourne. And this gives you an idea of some of the research outcomes that take us to Melbourne as the area for capital growth. So population is the biggest story in Melbourne, right? Population will exceed Sydney in the next 20 years. Lots of employment opportunities, economic growth and a diverse economy, and a lot of spending on infrastructure. So the infrastructure we particularly like is health and education. It's the fastest growing sectors in any modern economy. And someone mentioned before about Australia having one of the largest economies in the world. A lot of that is driven by health and education, and it's something that Australians do very well. Then this is the micro research, okay? So one suburb that we really like is Heidelberg. So these are some of the statistics around that. And then this is the due diligence piece. So this is a property that we have selected in Heidelberg because it stacks up. So, and the main reason it stacks up is, I think this is the little pointy thing, is that's the development and this is the hospital. So 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in here, and if you have a look at the rest of the district, you can see how it's mostly house and land, lots of big leafy trees. There aren't a lot of developments in this area that will suit nurses and doctors. The other thing that we know is that there's a very strong correlation between the age of the buyer or tenant and the age of the property that they find most desirable. So younger people prefer younger property. The other thing that we know is that millennials don't like to share. All right, so having a 1 bedroom property or a 2 bedroom in this is a really good idea, as opposed to say a 4 bedroom house. Then we talk to our clients about why, some of the things about that property, some more due diligence factors. And then we show them through the property that we've selected. So I'll just go through that quickly. And then we've got the cash flow. So normally we'll choose a couple, probably not this many, but I've just done this to illustrate for you. The one I selected, if we look at 208, this one is the most cash flow negative. Now we look at the cash flow on a property, and the reason why that is so important is it doesn't matter what the capital growth is if you cannot afford to keep the property. If this amount, if $4,000 a year is going to impact on your lifestyle too much, we would never recommend it for a client. It's really important that you understand that, because a lot of property investors look at the negative gearing aspect. And if you look at this property, the one I just highlighted, even though it's $4,000 negative in a cash flow line, it's actually, I think that's $500, I don't have my glasses on, but $500 a year cash flow positive after tax. So they're both important factors to take into consideration. If our client's going to struggle with the $4,000 but really likes that property, then we might ask their accountant to do corrections every quarter. We also create a wealth creation team for our clients, so they have the right broker, the right accountant, the right, a lawyer for the state, excuse me, and wills and insurances and everything else in place that they need. This is a case study. I think you've got that in your folder as well. And the referrals I'm looking for this week are people in your networks whose financial security you're concerned about. It's never too late, right? So I've got clients who are 50 who just go, I don't know how I'm going to retire. And we can give them a lot of comfort around investing in property and securing their futures. But I'm also looking at HR managers. As I said before, I'm really passionate about education and going into employment groups and talking to employees about what their future is going to be like is really great for HR managers, for engagement of their employees. Please like and follow our Calla Property social media assets. We're all over the place and we get really great information if you do that. And also next week, I think it is, you've got the invitation in your folders. Will, Lee and I from SF Capital are presenting at the Grace Hotel about building your portfolio. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Sia. We've got some time for some questions, 3 or 4 questions, so put your hand up and go for it. I'll bring the microphone to you. Questions, guys? Michael?
I've got a question for you, Susan. If you had the choice of investing in a property in Sydney or Melbourne, which one would you go for and why?
Okay, at the moment, the macro research is about understanding where every capital city is on the property clock. Getting the timing of the market right helps mitigate your risk against capital growth and about cash flow loss in the first 3 to 5 years, right? So we're always trying to identify the areas that are about number 7 or 8 because they're on the upswing. Sydney's on the downturn, okay? Whereas Melbourne is probably a little bit further along than we would like to recommend. However, the last couple of years or the last year or year and a half of growth in a capital city, it spikes enormously and probably will go up to say 17% growth this year. Last year it was 14.1%. So the other reason why I like Melbourne is for the population growth story and the most livable city. They're doing a lot to invest in satellite cities like Geelong. You've heard me speak about Geelong before, but also Bendigo and Ballarat. And other areas further out. So right now, I would recommend Melbourne. The other thing too is it's more affordable and the rental yields are going up. The rental yields in Sydney have been going down for a while. Yeah. So and that's about cash flow.
Hey Steve, you talked about income and a different type of insurance, expense insurance.
Yep.
Are they mutually exclusive or do you ever put the two of them in place at the same time?
No, put them in place at the same time. Business expense insurance is for business owners that have business expenses that are fixed, such as your rent, your electricity, your accountancy fees. These will happen if the business owner gets sick. And his income protection policy only pays up to 75 or 85% of your personal income. So what happens to your business expenses? Business expense insurance only goes for 12 months because an insurance company thinks that the business will be sold or you'll pass it on to somebody else or you'll wind it down if you're still sick after 12 months. While income protection, your personal insurance, goes right through to age 65, or some companies now have it going through to age 70, indexed with inflation, and whilst you're on claim, you're not paying any premiums. And as we all know, income is king. So business expense pays your business expenses, income protection insurance pays your personal income.
Any other questions, guys? Hands up. Yep, Melanie. Well, Stephen, do you want to take the microphone to her?
I can just Stephen, a question for you. Can you use your superannuation to pay for any insurance?
Yep. Superannuation is replacement of income. And you can lose your income 3 different ways. You can lose it on death, total and permanent disablement, and what else can we do? And retirement. Forgot about retirement. So 3 different ways you can lose your income totally. Superannuation is supposed to replace that. So your life insurance pays on death, so you can run that through your superannuation. Your total and permanent disablement means that you'll never work again, so that can be run through your superannuation fund. And of course your asset allocation and your increasing in asset, that's paid on retirement as well, which is investments. But be careful because you can only these days add $25,000 a year into your super fund. So if you have your life insurance and total and permanent disabled in your super fund for a long, long time, it'll reduce the superannuation benefit. So you've got to be careful. I'll often run superannuation and life insurance to begin with, but then we'll need a chat afterwards to make sure that we're not depleting your superannuation fund.
Fantastic. I think we might leave it there for the quest. So another round of applause for these two guys. And now that we know a lot more about